So, what if the end of the world wasn't just one single catastrophic event? What if it was more like a series of signs? Some subtle, some, well, not so subtle. Today, we're diving into the concept of Qiyamah, which is the Day of Judgment in Islamic tradition. We're going to look at all the prophesied signs, from changes in society to massive shifts in the cosmos. And it all starts with one simple idea. It all comes down to this basic truth, right? Nothing lasts forever. And the source material really leans into this, arguing that this principle doesn't just apply to you and me, but to, well, everything, the entire world. This idea of an inevitable end leads to the concept of a final day of reckoning, which has a very specific name. And that name is Qiyamah. It means the day of resurrection, the end of all life on earth and the final judgment. But here's what's so fascinating. The source doesn't just talk about the destination. It gives us a kind of roadmap of signs that are supposed to show up along the way. So let's get into that first category of signs. The first place we're told to look for these signs is within human society itself. The source describes these as symptoms of a widespread social and moral decay that's just going to become more and more common as time goes on. Wow, that's a really heavy thought, isn't it? The source says this isn't about a lack of faith, but about life on Earth becoming so incredibly difficult, so full of hardship, that death actually starts to look like a welcome escape. It's a prophecy about a world that's just really tough to live in. And it's not just about worldly struggles. The prophecies also point to a kind of spiritual breakdown. The text actually foretells that some people will go back to the old ways, specifically mentioning a return to idol worship, which is a huge shift away from the core belief in one God.
And these aren't just isolated events. They're all part of this bigger picture of societal change. The source talks about a time of such extreme wealth that nobody will even need to accept charity anymore. A huge increase in conflict and killing. A massive war between two groups who basically believe the same thing, but end up with enormous casualties. People competing to build taller and taller buildings, and to top it all off, the appearance of about 30 Dajjals, or great liars, who all claim to be prophets.
Okay, so that's what's happening in society. But the signs don't stop there. The prophecies actually extend out into the natural world, describing some really dramatic and honestly unprecedented changes to the planet itself. Now, this next one is pretty wild. One of the most striking prophecies is about a massive fire that comes out of the land of Hijaz. And we're not talking about a normal fire here. It's described as being so huge and so bright that it'll light up the necks of camels hundreds and hundreds of miles away in a city called Busra. Just to give you some perspective on that, we're talking about a fire in what is now Saudi Arabia, being visible from over 1,500 kilometers away in modern-day Syria. The scale of this thing is just immense. It's hard to even wrap your head around it. Then there's this other prophecy, and this one involves a really famous landmark. The text says that the Euphrates River is going to dry up, and when it does, it'll reveal a mountain of gold. But here's the crucial part. It comes with a very clear warning. Anyone who's there when it happens is told specifically not to take any of it. And for anyone who's not familiar, the Euphrates is this massive, historically vital river that flows through Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. So by tying this supernatural event and its warning to a real, tangible place, the prophecy carries a lot more weight. Beyond those really specific events, the source also talks about a more general disruption, like the very rules of nature start to bend. Earthquakes will become way more common. Time itself will feel like it's speeding up. And then there's one of the most definitive signs of all. The sun will rise from the west, a clear signal that the world as we know it is fundamentally changing. All right, so after all these general signs in society and in nature, things get really specific. The source lays out a final sequence. These are the 10 major signs, basically a definitive countdown of events that are supposed to happen one after another right before the end. And at the center of this final chapter is this epic showdown between two main figures. First, there's the Dajjal, the great deceiver whose appearance is said to be the event closest to the end. And opposing him is Isa ibn Maryam, or Jesus, who is prophesied to return to earth, confront the Dajjal, and ultimately defeat him. You'd think that after this massive confrontation, that's it, right? But what the source describes next is, well, it's not what you'd expect. Before the absolute end, there's this prophesied golden period. For 7 years, the world is said to experience total peace and justice. A brief, perfect time with no hatred between anyone, just before the final curtain falls. And this is it, the final countdown. The major signs include a huge smoke that covers the entire world, the appearance of the Dajjal, who we just talked about, a mysterious beast that will emerge and speak to people, the sun rising from the west, the return of Jesus, the release of Gog and Magog, these destructive tribes that have been held back until the end times, 3 enormous landslides in the east, the west, and the Arabian Peninsula, and finally, a fire from Yemen that will drive all of humanity to their final gathering place. So, we've gone through all these signs in society, in nature, and the final 10. But that brings us to a really important question. We've talked about the what, but now let's talk about the why. Why are all of these signs detailed in the source material in the first place? Let's put it plainly. What's the real takeaway from all this? Is this supposed to be some kind of cosmic checklist for us to watch for? A schedule for the end of the world? According to the source, the answer is a clear no. The thing is, according to the source, it's not about that at all. It's not a timetable to predict the future. It's more like a mirror to look at ourselves right now. The whole point isn't to create fear or anxiety, but to encourage a state of constant spiritual and moral readiness. And that really gets to the heart of it. The message is that knowing about these signs isn't about looking for them in the news every day. It's about taking the idea of a final accountability seriously, making it a priority that shapes how you live your life today, with a focus on your faith and your actions, no matter when that final day actually comes.